There was the big build-up for the Ashes series, and then you didn't play in the Ashes series.
Yep.
This is something you haven't talked about, and if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm happy to go through it.
So for those that aren't aware, tell people how you hit the headlines, Meg.
Essentially, I was the first girl to be part of a team in the APS competition. I was actually more of a bowler.
Oh.
That actually worked in my favour a lot of the time because the boys were scared to get out to the girl.
And you played your second one-day international, and you made 104. At 18 years, 288 days, the youngest ever Australian to make a century, passing the record of...
I want to say Ricky P.
Ricky P. T20 World Cup in Australia that everyone famously remembers.
I must admit, early doors when they wanted to play it at the MCG and sell out or get close to, I was a big sceptic.
And how do you end up on stage with Katy Perry?
Before the game, there was a bit of like, oh, if we win, we're definitely getting up. There's actually this one photo of me hugging Katy Perry.
Yes.
She tried to go around me, but I like literally I grabbed her to make sure it happened. That is one of my favourite photos, actually. What I have come to know is that everybody's always going through something, no matter how much they look like they've got things under control. And that was something that I feel like I was very good at, looking like I have everything under control. That's absolutely not the case.
I reckon there are some things as a cricket fan, when you walk past the telly, you simply have to watch. I would say Ricky Ponting's pull shot. I would say Mark Waugh's clip off his legs. And I would say Meg Lanning's cover drive. And she sits here across from me. Meg, welcome to the Howie Games. How are you?
Thanks, Howie. I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I'm a big fan. I've listened to many episodes
Thank you.
At home and abroad, so I'm looking forward to the chat.
Do you stick to the cricketers or do you go across all sports?
I like to venture out a little bit. Obviously know a little bit more about cricket, but I'm a keen sports fan. Any sport that's happening at the time, I like to get into, and listening to hear other athletes and people talk about their journeys is something I really enjoy doing.
Well, you immediately walked in here and started lamenting the fact the Swans had got beaten by Richmond. And I said, let's not talk about it too much. Let's save it for the podcast. So, and you were starting to run me through forward structures and what's happening in the bounce. So you obviously love your AFL.
I do. Dad's from Victoria, so that's where sort of the love of AFL came from. Grew up in Sydney, actually, hence going for the Swannies. Mum and Dad were actually members of the Swans when they first moved to Sydney. They keep telling me that they were going along to games when there were about 100 people in the stands and not much happening. And then we were members all through sort of primary school when I lived in Sydney, and loved the Swannies.
Who was your player at that stage when you were in primary school?
Paul Kelly.
Paul Kelly?
Yeah, he was my favourite. He was the skipper. I remember the day he did his knee, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember who we were playing, but it was at the SCG and it was a bit of a disaster. But yeah, being a lifelong Swannies fan, try and keep up with them as much as possible. And whenever I am back in Melbourne and they come down to play, I try to go along and watch. But I ride the highs and lows, and a little bit frustrating on the weekend.
So tell me about what happened. You got beat by Richmond. What was Meg Lanning's analysis of the scenario out in the middle?
We just didn't look like it. Just looked a little bit off from the start. And we have tended to do that a little bit, actually, which is quite frustrating because we've got some good young kids. Errol Gordon's my favourite. So we can play some good footy, some exciting footy, and then I guess like most teams, you have your patches where not quite as good. But I love watching them play every weekend.
You've been to 2 grand finals to see the Swans, and you are 0.
I'm not allowed to go anymore if we make another one.
So which did you go to? Oh, you went to the Geelong one, and that's not good.
You know what? I've actually been to 3 losing grand finals now. I think about it.
Right.
The second West Coast one,
okay,
where we lost by a point.
Oh, that's got to hurt.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
How was that walking out of the G that day?
Yeah, that was...
So you didn't go to the one they won?
No, missed that one. I was away playing hockey, I think, interstate.
Right.
Watched it on TV, so that was okay. And then I thought I'd go along the next year and we'd get another win, and then we lost by a point. Then I was at the Hawthorn... what was that, 2014, I think?
It was a beautiful day for football.
It was all good until the first bounce, and then
Yes.
it went downhill from there. And the Geelong one, a couple of years
Yeah.
back, was a similar story. So, yeah, I've been banned from going to any more down the track.
We're going to talk about cricket, but before we start at the start, you've just come back from the WPL. And we'll get to the crowds and stuff you played in front of when you started playing international cricket. But tell me about the WPL. So there's obviously the IPL in India and then the Women's Premier League. I watched parts of it and the crowds were enormous. It was mind-blowing. I haven't seen it. I've seen the IPL live. What's the experience like?
It's a lot of fun. There's always something happening, and the crowds and the atmosphere is something I don't think I've experienced before, or maybe once the World Cup final at the G. That's probably the only other time.
Yeah.
But over there, it's consistent. It's every game. They follow their sort of teams or players like crazy. So we played in Bangalore for the first half, and you couldn't hear yourself think. Running between the wickets is a challenge with playing in a new team with people who you're not familiar with. So that's a challenge to start off with.
And different languages too.
Different languages. And then you also can't hear the person at the other end. So essentially it was just sort of watching each other, trying to make sure we didn't get run out. But yeah, the crowds were just amazing. The atmosphere it created, you sort of look around sometimes and wonder, what you're doing and how you sort of came to be involved in something like that. And it was consistent, as I said. It wasn't just a one-off game. It was every game the fans turned up and passionately cheered for their team and players and the game in general. So it's been a bit of a game changer for the women's game, I think. It's sort of just shown how passionate they are for cricket over there and sort of what's possible sort of moving forward for the game.
I've been privileged enough to experience it at the IPL and going back to the hotel room and the cricketers arrive in the foyer and it is bedlam. What's it like when you guys, girls, come and go?
Yep. Or when you win, it's bedlam.
Okay.
When you lose, nothing.
Right.
Yeah. So
you're arriving back after a win. Describe it when you get off the team bus.
Yeah. So firstly, when you leave the hotel to go to the game, you've got all the hotel staff and everyone there with flags for your team, sending you off to the game in style. And then if you've had a win, it's all fun and games. Everybody's up and about. It's celebration, like you've won the tournament. Really, it actually takes a bit of getting used to because it's not really how we do it here.
No,
in Australia, you've got to keep a lid on it.
Keep a lid on one game at a time. Structures and processes.
Go with it. Just really embrace the fact that you're winning. And then you get back to the hotel, and again, there's all these staff, more staff than there were when they left. And there's music. There's a cake. There's always a cake.
A cake?
Yeah. When you get back and you've had a win. Congratulations, Delhi.
Do we eat cake, or is it too much cake? Because you're on a successful team.
It depends on night.
Okay.
Like most people do. It's it'd be rude not to sort of try it out. So yeah, the cake's there when you win, and it's celebrations, drinks, everything going on. And then when you lose, it's like silence, and then you get back nothing. So it's
no one looking anyone in the eye.
No, there's no one in the hotel. It's just. Yeah, it was quite eye-opening to start with. It's sort of, I feel like it sends the wrong message in a way, but that's how they roll over there. It is about being successful and winning, and the highs and the lows. Like there's a massive roller coaster, which is a little bit different to how sort of, or any of the teams that I've operated in before. You try and keep it relatively level, but I think what I have learned going over there is the more you just embrace and go with the flow and don't ask too many questions around things. Like some things just don't make sense because they're just different. Obviously, the culture is very different. You just got to try and embrace it. And the more you do that, the more you enjoy it, and the less worked up I think you can get about things. So that's sort of how I've tried to approach it.
After the Men's World Cup final, which I was very privileged to be at in Ahmedabad November, Meg, I couldn't get out because my flight was booked late. I couldn't get out for 3 days. And every morning at breakfast, like as you know, they're the world's nicest people in India, and they just love talking about cricket. And the blokes at the buffet and bringing the tea and stuff, like because Australia won, they were that flat. They didn't want to look in your eye. They didn't want to serve you. And I was giving to them for 3 days. I was the last person in Ahmedabad, and they knew I was Australian. It's hard to explain to people the passion for the game in India. Do you get, because the cricketers rarely leave the hotel during the World Cup or the IPL due to the nature of the madness. Do you get to go outside of the hotel? And if you do, what type of recognition is there for you and your teammates?
I probably venture out a little bit more than most because I can't sit still.
Yeah, I'm the same. I have to be out the door.
So I like to be able to go out. It sort of depends where we are. Obviously, like safety is important, and that's sort of drilled into us a little bit. But I do like to go out and see different things. I walk a lot.
We need to go together because this is what I do. Like the IPL, you do a game, and then next morning you fly, and then you have that afternoon off before the next game. So I just no map, just walk for hours, and the things you see. Yeah, extraordinary. So this is what you do. You go out and walk.
Yeah, and I generally walk to find coffee.
Right.
Which in India is a bit more of a challenge than it is back here in Melbourne. But I have managed to find places wherever I've gone. So it sort of is. It's a bit of a novelty, I guess. Like I get to, I think when I was in Bangalore, I was walking sort of 45, 50 minutes to find a coffee. Now it sounds a bit silly, but it gave me something to do, and it actually allowed me to see the different parts of the cities that I was in, and I wouldn't really do that if I wasn't doing that. So I guess it's a bit different for us compared to the guys in terms of people sort of know, and you get a few looks here and there, and people the odd selfie and things like that, but nothing that would make me not be able to go out. So I guess that's lucky in a way. I can go out and all of us can sort of go out and do different things, but as the tournament goes on, that it happens more and more. People are recognising you a little bit, and
because it is every news station, every TV station. Yeah, like there's not. You're in the gym and there's nothing on the telly but cricket, cricket, and cricket.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's
you watch
good.
your own highlights, Meg, which is good.
I don't like to, but sometimes you're in the gym. Don't. And it's all right if you've won the night before, you've played well or whatever, and they're watching the highlights. But if it's a bad game and you've lost, I don't want to be watching.
But you see it a lot,
and it's just there. You can't escape it.
I spoke to Tim David about this, and he'd smacked a few, and I saw him, and I said, "Mate, all I've seen the last 3 days is you making your 62 not out." He said, "Yeah, that's great," but he said, "When you make a duck, you can't escape it, Meg."
Yeah. Because we lost the final, and I had a few days in Delhi before I flew out. And I was just sitting down in the bar having a Diet Coke, I think, at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, the strong stuff. And then the final came on a replay, and I was like, oh, that's my cue to leave. Because it was just, you just can't escape it. It's everywhere. But that's just what they love. And it's pretty much their life. And, the amount of people who care about the game and sort of what happens is pretty incredible. It's an absolutely incredible country.
Have you had the pleasure of going to Mumbai or not?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Mumbai, yeah.
I don't know whether you've been to the Maidan, the cricket ground. The thing that struck me anywhere in India, but especially, I played a lot of cricket. I played a lot of cricket on the street all over the place, Megan. I'm sure you don't get that opportunity, but just grounds, just chockers with boys, girls, kids, adults playing cricket, and, you point in one game, but you square leg in another game, and there's balls flying around. It's as a cricket fan, which you and I ostensibly are, when it's all said and done, you're very good at the game, and I talk about the game, but I think that's the thing I love about it. It's just cricket everywhere. Yeah,
absolutely, and it's sort of organised in some ways, but unstructured in a lot
very
as well. It's just like
I would say.
You just turn up and you play, and it's sort of, it doesn't matter who's playing. It's just, there's a game going on somewhere, and the IPL, the WPL last year was based just in Mumbai.
Okay, where'd you stay?
The Taj.
Nice. Wow. So now we need to explain to people, I've been there. Nice hotel, but this is your 2-star backpacker where Meg is. So this is overlooking the most historic parts of Mumbai. Wow.
Yeah, beautiful spot. So I that was good because it allowed me to get out a little bit in that sort of area. And there's that, I don't know if it's the same place you were talking about, that ground where there's an ass track that goes around around the outside of it. And there's just literally many games going on every
Got to be
day.
40 games at any stage.
Yeah, incredible. And all different ages, kids, boys, girls, adults, it's and all times of the day too. It's incredible. I walked past there numerous times and would just sort of watch and see sort of how it was all going down. But everywhere you look in India, there's a game of cricket going on. You can just see the passion and how much they love the game, and it's pretty cool to see. Obviously here in Australia, it's also structured, and much more organised, but they just love it and they just go and play. It's pretty cool to see.
Do you ever get in that situation when you're playing, say, in the WPL and look around and think, when I started playing professional cricket as a teenager, there'd be, 3 men and a dog there. And
Mum and dad.
Yeah, and mum and dad and
Yeah.
the parents. And now you're playing in front of tens of thousands of people that know your name. There's enormous television rights now at stake. You're obviously getting paid. I should have looked. I don't know. You got paid. How much do you get paid to play in the WPL, Meg? Like it's an auction stitch.
Yeah,
so
it
it's
is.
all out there.
It was 180K or something
Okay,
like that.
so
I mean, the whole auction thing was a crazy thing
Well, okay,
for me
we'll,
to go
we'll
through
stop
in the
that
first
point
place.
then.
Yeah.
Tell me about the auction then.
Yeah. So it was obviously new.
So, but before we
for
go on,
us,
so
yeah.
Meg's played in the last 2 years. You were the leading run scorer in the first year. Your team lost the final. You were the second leading run scorer this time, just behind Elise Perry. And again, unfortunately, your team lost the final. Next year, you'll be the leading run scorer and you'll win it. So that Meg has dominated the competition. So have you been through one auction or two auctions?
Just one auction.
Okay, so
Yeah.
tell us about it.
Well, it happened at a really interesting time actually for the women's game. It was smack bang in the middle of the T20 World Cup
Okay.
last year.
Yep.
So you got this new concept of an auction. Obviously, everyone wants to be part of it, and it was right in the middle of the World Cup. So that just sort of added another element to it for us as a team and individually. We had a few conversations around how we were going to manage it because obviously everyone wanted to be a part of it, but you don't really have any control over how it pans
control.
out. I didn't watch it personally. I sent a message to a friend and I was like, "Can you watch it for me and just send me a text? What happened?" Because I just couldn't bring myself to watch it.
So for those that haven't followed it, you have is there financial bands that you put yourself in?
I think you put a reserve price in.
Right.
Yeah. But they're all relatively low for us initially, and nobody knew sort of what they were walking into. So you put your reserve price in, and then you sort of just got to let it play out.
And you didn't watch it.
No, I didn't watch it.
Geez,
I
your
couldn't.
eyes cold.
I couldn't watch it. I just found the whole thing so strange. Just being
why
auctioned off.
Right.
Everybody knowing what you go for, all that sort of thing. I just found it really strange. So I was like, I just want to be part of it. So hopefully I get picked up, and I'll just go with it from there. We actually had a training session at the time of the auction. I think it was optional. It was early in the tour, so everybody was there. That's what happens later in the tour. There's nobody at optional trainings.
Well, the blokes don't turn up to optional trainings at all, from what I can gather. So I'm glad some are there at the start of the tournament.
So some of the girls were watching it on their phones and all
At
sorts
training.
Of, yeah. Like they
Wow.
obviously were
Yes,
finished
of
their
course.
hit and they were just on the side. But I don't know. I just found it weird, so I couldn't watch it. But luckily for us, it was on a rest day, so then we dealt with it and moved on. But I know some of the England girls were on their way to play their game, and they were having their team meeting. They were staying at the same hotel as the Indian girls.
Yep.
So the England girls could hear all the Indian girls cheering, people getting auctioned off and bought by teams, and then some of the England girls, and same as Australian girls, some got picked up, some didn't, and it was just like this whole crazy roller coaster of emotions for people, different for everybody. Some people went for crazy money, some people who you're like, oh, they're an amazing player, went for not much, like that's sort of the luck of the draw.
So what was
it was strange.
Was it Ash Gardner?
Yeah.
Went for
500 and something. Yeah. So like for us, like that's just like next level. So it was a very interesting experience, the whole auction thing.
So your first game for Australia, cast your mind back. The first time you represented Australia, which would have been as a 17-year-old?
Yeah, maybe I was 18. I
Okay.
think.
So can you cast your mind back to what you would have got paid for your first game to play for Australia?
Oh, I don't think we got match payments back then. I
Okay.
think the contracting system was 3 tiers, 5,000, 10,000 and 15,000.
For the year?
Yeah, they were the contracts.
Which tier did you jump into?
I started at 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hence the question I was trying to ask you before. You've gone in this auction and sold for nearly $200,000. That you need to keep hanging on, Meg, because that's going to get up to 4 and 5. But like the Phoebe Litchfields of the world will be $1 million. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So it's an extraordinary journey in one person's career from 5,000 for a year to 200,000, or in Ash's case, $500,000 for a month, isn't it? It really is. And it's credit to all the hard work that you've done and those before you, the Mel Joneses, the Lisa Stalakers, the Belinda Clarks, have done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy to think where the game's at now. And I've said this to a few of the girls. It's like I can't get my head around what it's going to look like in 10 years' time. Hopefully it's better again, in a better place in terms of
I think
how
it
much.
will be.
Yeah, I hope so. In terms of how much cricket people are playing, the conditions, the pay, all of that. I hope it continues to get better for the younger players coming through. That's really important because that's, and we've spoken a lot about this as an Australian team, is making sure that we have respect and understand the work that came before us from, a lot of the past Australian players who didn't get paid at all to play for Australia. In fact, some of them paid to play.
Absolutely.
Which is hard to get your head around, playing now. But that's why, hopefully in 10 years' time, it's continues to improve and become bigger and better, and there's more opportunities for young girls. That's really, really crucial for us. So to have been through that sort of journey of very much part-time, training after hours, touring once or twice a year, no crowds, to playing in the WPL and being paid to play, and playing all year round. It's been a pretty incredible journey to sort of see, and I think I feel quite lucky to actually to have been part of the sort of the transition into that
both,
bit.
Haven't you?
Yeah. So
you've seen the non-professional to what is now fully professional.
Yeah, and I think that non-professional or sort of part-time era taught me a lot. And I learnt a lot through that period of time, which sort of has helped me towards the back end a little bit. Now young players coming in don't necessarily have to work or study or sort of time manage as much in terms of with life and things like that. So that's a different challenge for them to navigate. And that doesn't mean it's easier or harder, but it's just different. But I feel like the fact that I started when I did and now it's gotten to that point, it sort of taught me a fair bit throughout, which I think I'm very thankful for.
With the money and the exposure comes increased pressure, though, like in any job. And 200 odd episodes of this show, there's a few things that stick in my mind. And one was what Elise said when she came on the show, 5 years ago. And she felt for the development of the game, she wanted to read in the paper, Perry was out for a duck to a shot she'd be disappointed by. She slashed wide outside off stump, and it was a poor dismissal, for want of a better term. I read the sports pages religiously. I'm not sure we're there yet. How do you sit on... Indians are a lot more direct with feedback, I find, in the media.
Yeah.
But have you ever read about yourself basically... Lanning stuffed it. So, you saw what's going with Alex Carey or Marnus Labuschagne at the moment, or if Starkey has a bad spell, bang, straight into it. Where do you sit on that? I don't know. I don't really understand that situation.
No, there's probably been two times in my career where I felt like that happened. That was the 2017 World Cup when we lost in the semi-final to India, which is the first time in a while we'd sort of... not done as well as maybe what we should have.
Let's be honest, not won the tournament.
No, which was our expectations and other people's expectations too. And then the T20 World Cup here in Australia, where we actually, it ended well, but the wheels were falling off a little bit at the start of the tournament. So those couple of times...
and was that discussing your batting performance or your captaincy?
More around the team,
okay.
I would say.
The team.
I feel like we've gotten to the point where maybe questions can be asked or are asked of the team if it's not quite going well, but whether individually we're there yet, maybe not. And
do you think it should be or shouldn't be?
I personally get a little bit frustrated seeing the negativity towards some sports people.
I agree,
I think of
100%.
Finchie when he sort of the back end of his career, like how much people were talking about, how he was going. It's time to finish up. Like pretty much calling quits for his career for someone who'd done so incredibly well throughout for a long period of time. It just turns really quickly and then they retire and it's like, oh, what an amazing player! Like, oh, we're going to miss him. David Warner was sort of a similar.
We do retire our champions here, don't we?
Yeah.
Whereas the Americans, please keep playing. Please keep playing. Play one more season. Give us another year's entertainment. Yeah.
I actually went on a holiday to America in November 2022. I can't remember. A couple of years ago, and I went to a couple of the sports, and I loved it. And one of the bits that I did love was how the players, it sort of looked like they could just be themselves and really express themselves. And I in my head I was thinking, if that was happening in Australia, that would be called arrogant. Whether it's their celebrations or how they talk after the game. Like if
we are on the same page here, Meg. I honestly, I could not agree with you more.
Yeah, it's like if they'd had a good game, they said they had a good game.
I'm the man. I'm the woman.
Yeah.
Whereas here we want them to say,
no, that like, I just did it for the team. Like,
could have done it.
And don't get me wrong,
girls.
I probably have done
I bet you have.
a long period of time, but it's drilled into us to actually respond like that. And I loved that part of the American sports is that you could just see people being themselves and being out there and carrying on, carrying on with their celebrations and whatnot. But it was like I actually really loved that aspect of it because that doesn't happen here in Australia.
So if you peeled off 100 off 48 deliveries and I came to interview you, is there any part of you would, Meg, that was unbelievable. You know what, Howie? I was on fire today. Is there any part of you that wants to express yourself like that? Because it's so against what we I don't know why. That's against what we do here. Yeah,
I think I'd be mindful. Yeah, and I wish I didn't say that.
Right.
I didn't feel like that, but that's sort of how it's come up. So I think I think we can just be overly negative about things, and even David Warner, like the way sort of it finished up with him here, and now he's gone, and it's like, oh, we're missing David Warner, and it's like if you go back and read all the stuff that everybody was writing before he retired or made the decision, it's just like, I don't know, it sort of just grinds my gears a little bit sometimes because I just feel like they're greats of the game who have significantly contributed over a long period of time, and we just sort of turn on them pretty quick. But then we celebrate them when they finish up, and it's like, oh, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me sometimes.
I'm in complete agreement. Okay, cricket. When do you first start playing cricket? Where are you? How old are you?
Oh, primary school, Warrawee Public School.
Right.
And it would have been recess and lunch. Always with the boys. None of the girls were playing, but didn't really bother me too much. I was happy just playing, and then I remember one of the teachers came up, I was in grade 5, and he sort of mentioned that there was a rep girls team trials that were coming up and sort of asked if I wanted to get involved, and I did. Went along and then, sort of made that team and then sort of just went from there. There's 5 kids in our family, so my younger sister Anna also played a lot of cricket. So we had a lot of battles in the backyard as well. So that's sort of my first memories.
Would that rep team being the first all-girls team you played in? Were you playing with the boys as you were growing up? Yeah,
well, I was just playing it with the boys at school.
Yep.
And then,
so what would have been your first organised cricket? For the rep team? Or
a couple of school games.
Okay.
Yeah, but then the rep team.
Were you the only girl in the school team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it never occurred to me that was an issue.
Yeah, grade 5, grade 6.
Yeah, I just wanted to play it. It didn't really bother me. I did the same with sort of soccer and AFL and all that. So then Sydney North was the team that I first played for. They were my sort of rep regional team that we played a tournament in when I was grade 5, I think.
And were you... I always ask this question, and I always use this same analogy. Were you Ricky Ponting, who I think was probably a hero of you, that was always unbelievable and way better than everyone else, or were you, and was always going to play for Australia, or were you Justin Langer that was talented but had to work extremely hard? So now you can put your American hat on and be honest, Meg.
I think if I'm honest, I probably looking back, always did quite well
Yep.
straight away, and probably made all of the teams that I tried out for, and sort of kept progressing pretty quick. So I didn't probably realise it at the time, but looking back, having had a little bit of time to reflect recently, I probably was one of the better players right from sort of the start, and things seemed to flow relatively. The path seemed to flow relatively easily is not the right word, but sort of in a linear sort of fashion.
So if I have a child now that is a girl, which I do, who's not into cricket, I try. She had a good in-swinger too at 12.
It's a good skill to have.
I know, I don't know. Anyway, it's a story for another day. But she would be growing up, and the local club I play for now has got girls' teams, women's teams, and they look up to you and Alyssa and Elise and Ash. But when you grew up, were the girls that you looked up to, or I know that you were a big Ricky fan?
No, there wasn't, because I didn't know that women's teams really existed, to be honest. I didn't know girls' teams existed until the teacher came up and asked if I wanted to try out. So that was the first sort of time I realised or knew that there was women's cricket, but it was only men's cricket on TV. So whatever you see and watch is sort of all you really know. So
if you can't see it, you can't be it.
Yeah. It's a really true saying that. I don't think I realised what it meant for a while, but it's looking back at my sort of pathway through. Ricky Ponting was my hero and someone I love watching.
When did you first meet him?
I met him very briefly when I was in high school.
Were you a fangirl?
A little bit. It was at a sports management company thing. There were a few young athletes there, and Ricky came along, and he just did a quick chat and a few questions and stuff like that. So I probably didn't ask any questions because I would have been shy, but that was the first time I met him. I've met him a couple of times otherwise, but I can't say we know each other well, but even just listening to him commentate these days.
It's very good, isn't
Yeah,
it?
he is. Yeah, you can just tell he just knows what he's talking about.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because obviously you're at Delhi now in the WPL, and he's the Delhi, the man in charge there. There's, I guess, the first time the public was gained an understanding of who Meg Lanning was, and I was actually reading the article. I found the article when you made a splash as a young schoolgirl at Carey. I'm sure you've spoke about this before. I didn't realise the age, because my young fella's now playing cricket for Geelong College. So in that scene, he plays in Year 7, and I've been to watch him this year, and they played Carey, and I was like, Meg's team. So for those that aren't aware, put your American hat on and tell people how you hit the headlines, Meg.
Yep. Okay. So I was the first girl to be part of a team in the APS competition, which is the comp where there's Melbourne Grammar, Scotch College, the Geelong teams, Carey, Caulfield, and all sorts of other schools.
And amazing facilities.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Which I definitely took for granted. Like, you don't realise how good they are. Like, immaculate.
Crazy.
Outfields, pitch is beautiful.
Well, young Mako does, my son, because he's come from Barwon Heads Primary and playing on hard wickets.
Yeah.
And he goes to, without sidetracking you, his sister went there and he's like, oh, Dad, I don't know if I want to go here. I said, well, let's just go for a look around. And we picked Sky up, and there was 3 turf wickets. And he said, Dad, I'm ready to go. Can I go now? So it cost me about an extra $25,000 because we went a year early.
Yeah.
But yeah, amazing facilities.
Yes, yeah. So like I started playing in the boys' team. So we moved from Sydney to Melbourne, start of high school for me.
Yep.
So went to Carey, and initially they were like, well, we've only got boys' teams, so you can give it a crack, have a go. If you like it, great, keep going. If you don't like it, we'll pick another sport. So you have to play a summer and a winter sport.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, like I wasn't thinking too much of it. So I played sort of the 7As, 8As, 9As, on turf, by the way, in Year 7 and Year 8. Like incredible wickets. I didn't realise at the time, but it was pretty cool. I even went on a trip to England, a cricket trip to England, with the school team. Again, the only girl.
Only girl?
Yeah. Didn't really think too much of it. Like, I'd been part of the teams for a little while.
Did you make runs in England?
I think I made 150.
Okay.
Not many.
Righto. How are you going in 7, 8, and 9?
Okay. To be honest, actually, I was actually more of a bowler.
Oh.
Yeah, I actually made my first state team in under 12s as a bowler.
What, we're sending down heat or?
Well, at that time it was not heat, but like pretty good control, good outswing. And then the older I got, the quicker I got, and the less control I got.
Right.
The radar went off. If you ask anyone who's faced me bowl or seen me bowl, they don't know where it's going. I don't know where it's going, but it was quick.
This I didn't know about.
Yeah. So I've got international wickets.
Right.
I do like to talk about them.
Okay.
Actually, 'cause
How
they're
many
very
international
rare.
wickets
I think
have you
I'd say at least 5.
Who's your best?
Amy Satterthwaite got her twice.
How?
LBW, and I don't know, maybe court.
I like that you know that.
Yeah. So anyway, I was mainly bowling, to be honest. It actually worked in my favour a lot of the time because the boys were scared to get out to the girl. So they were just like, plodding around trying not to get out.
True. That's so true.
Because they would just get stick from their mates.
Yeah.
And not just at the game, like during the week and stuff like that. So I tried to use that to my advantage. So that helped. So I made a few runs here and there, but not that well. So then I played all through year 7, 8, 9. And then the APS comp works, so it starts actually in term 4. And you play some 2-day cricket.
Yep.
So I actually played in the first 11 at the end of year 9.
At age 14.
Yeah, something like that.
It wasn't. It was actually, you were 14.
Yeah.
You were 14.
And so, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I probably still don't quite realise it now. And I definitely didn't realise it.
Did the school make a big deal of it?
Not really. I mean, I've always been somebody who likes to just sort of cruise along and not really
low-key.
make too much of a deal of anything. And the only reason I sort of thought something was up a little bit is because a couple of radio stations rang Mum and Dad. I don't know how do they get their number. Like, that's just a bit
Rang the old
strange.
landline?
Yeah. Well, not on the
Okay.
maybe landline. I don't know. And they wanted to do a few interviews.
And did you?
Oh, probably. God, I'd hate to listen to
Oh,
them.
I'd love to find that.
I'd hate to listen to them. And they wanted to chat about it. And that was the only reason it was sort of a bit. And then it sort of became a bit of a thing. But I never realised what sort of it was that I was doing because I just wanted to play. And I'd played with them from year 7, 8, 9. Like, it just didn't seem like a really big deal to me. And even like today, it sort of doesn't. But I'm probably understanding that it probably was
a big
quite
deal.
big. Yeah, it was. And
How'd you go in that first game?
oh, not great. I don't think. I think
Okay.
I made like 15 or 20 or something.
Right.
And don't know if I got a wicket or not. But to be fair, I played 3 years in the first line. I didn't do that well. I think I made a couple of 50s or whatever.
Well, you were doing well enough to hold your spot.
Well, and I'm not sure, Kerry, we weren't much chop in those days. I think the first year we only won 1 game. It might have been Geelong Grammar we beat, actually.
No, now listen, we're at college, not grammar. I'm not earning enough to go to send the kids to grammar, Erica and I.
Well,
No,
it was
no.
one of the Geelong teams we beat,
Right.
and it was towards the back end of the year, so we were wanting to get a win on the board. We became a lot better, but I like look back at that time and like I loved it. It was challenging. Like, it took me out of my comfort zone a bit.
Yeah.
And there were times when the boys were a bit silly and
Yeah.
you sort of just roll with it a little bit, but that's fine. But it actually, I look back, like, not only just from a cricket perspective, because we played some 2-day stuff, which I think was really good. Sort of learned the game at quite a young age. But yeah, just out of my comfort zone a little bit. And so I think it was a really good sort of lesson for me early on to sort of build some good mental toughness, I guess, and also test my skills. So I look back at that time and thoroughly enjoyed it and think it was a really important part of my sort of early pathway.
As you see, I have notes, but I rarely refer to them, but I want to get the dates right. So the 30th of December 2010, a T20 International versus New Zealand. You made your debut. You made 10 versus the Kiwis. Was playing for Australia everything it cracked up to be? What are your memories?
Well, that was my first T20. I was supposed to play a T20 a couple of days before, but we got washed out. So I had to wait a few more.
I see you selected, but no game.
Yeah, no game. We sat in the change rooms in New Zealand for a couple of hours, and then so this is my first tour. I didn't really expect to to play too much, to be honest. And I'd done a little bit at state level. I had a few like breakthrough innings probably, but not dominating for years to get into the team. So I got picked quite early and didn't really think I'd play that much on the tour. But then I was opening the batting straight up, straight into it. I think that innings where I got 10, I think I hit a 6 and a 4.
Oh, you got on with it
and then I was out. I can't actually remember exactly where it was. It was a very small New Zealand town.
Big ground though, big boundaries.
Massive boundaries, yeah, massive. So, yeah, I don't remember a lot about it. I remember a little bit more about the series so directly after that, which was the Ashes. So we played New Zealand and flew directly over to Perth to start the Ashes series. So it was sort of a double tour, which I probably remember more about that because it was a very quick series, I think, in New Zealand. I can't remember a lot about it.
Well, not much later. So before you skip across to that, it's the 7th of January 2011, you played your second one-day international and you made 104 versus England in Perth at 18 years, 288 days, the youngest ever Australian to make a century, passing the record of...
I want to say Ricky P.
Ricky P. So we will talk about how phenomenal your international career has been. Well, I'll talk about it. You won't want to. But, that's a big statement. That's a big statement. So an innings like that, does the world around you begin to change or not so much?
Not so much. I didn't think. I remember that game. Again, I think I was opening the batting in the one days as well, which was a bit new to me. I'd done it a little bit, but I'd always been sort of a 3, 4, or 5 batter.
I've watched the innings. I watched it last night, but it's got a music montage. There's no commentary on it.
No,
Have you got a VHS somewhere tucked away or not?
Probably not. I don't know. Okay. I don't tend to have my highlights stored away, but
sure you don't.
Yeah, I remember that. And one of my favourite memories actually of, I think it was that game, is of the current Aussie coach Shelley Nitschke.
Yes.
So we were opening the batting together, and there was an English keeper, and she was giving me a bit of chirp.
Was she?
Yeah, which was fine. Nothing too untoward. But
what
just,
type of stuff was she giving you, Meg?
Just knew that I was young and,
Okay.
and I was just a bit like, oh, whatever. And I just remember Shelley Nitschke marching down, as she does, and telling the keeper in no uncertain terms to shut up. She didn't use those words.
No.
And I was just in the middle of this with sort of not really knowing what to do. So that was my first sort of real, having Shell as my batting partner and sort of getting to know her a little bit. But I just remember her walking down and just like telling the keeper where to go, which I look back now and is quite funny. Obviously, then she became the Aussie coach and assistant coach as well. So I remember that. And then, the innings, it just sort of happened. I don't know. I think I made 20 odd in the first ODI and thought, oh yeah, like that was okay. Like It wasn't anything I didn't feel like I could do. And then it all seemed to, it fell into place a little bit in the second ODI, which was nice.
So I had one of my sporting heroes, Kelly Slater, came on the show, Meg, and he's won 11 world titles. So if you get, Mick Fanning on, you can probably talk about the 3 world titles with him. Kelly Slater, you can't go through and talk about every... And it's a bit the same with you. 2 50-over World Cups, 5 T20 World Cups, the most centuries of any female to ever play the game at international level. I want to ask you about some of those World Cups, but from your perspective, what made... Like I mentioned your cover drive at the start, a very easy on the eye, very elegant batter. What was your key to success with bat in hand to the fact that you've broken every record in the women's game? American hat.
Yeah. I think it's my probably the mental side of my game, which I didn't really understand when I was initially playing, and sort of towards the back end I probably understood a little bit more about it. But cricket's such a unique game that just because you have really, really good skills doesn't mean you're going to be successful, especially as a batter. Like
one chance.
Yep.
One
and
ball.
Sometimes I wonder why the heck I became a batter. Like it's stupid. You could make half a mistake, a quarter of a mistake. Sometimes you don't even really make a mistake and you're out. That's it. There's no coming back.
And you watch all your mates bat for the rest of the day.
It's just like that just makes no sense. Like why would you
this is what I'm telling my 12-year-old
put
at the
yourself
moment.
through that? Like
It's a brutal game as a batter.
Yeah, it is. And it's not until you think about it like that where it's like, geez, like making runs actually is not that easy. Like it's hard. Like even if you're facing people who you think are not that good at bowlers, like it's not as simple as that. So I think I just had the ability to be able to make the right decisions out in the middle whether there was heaps of pressure or no pressure or different situations of the game. I don't know whether I naturally had that or I learnt it. It's probably a bit of both.
So I was going to say, was it learned or innate?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of both, but I did have it from a young age, I guess, the ability to play well in a game. I just think cricket's so unique in that way, and that's what separates the good players from the great players is their ability to execute when they need to over and over again. Like, and batting is just a classic. It's like you go out there for your first 10 balls and you're really switched on because it's like, you know, you're most vulnerable in your first 10 balls. I get more nervous before the game and waiting, and then once I go out there, I'm fine.
Yep.
And you realise that it's just cricket. It's the same cricket you've been playing no matter what. But then you're like, and the moment you still start to feel comfortable, for me, that was always the danger time because you're just like a little bit off, and the moment you're just a little bit off, think you got it all worked out, it all comes crashing down really quick. So yeah, I think my ability to just stay switched on and make the right decisions at the right time, I think, is what has allowed me to be successful.
And then as a leader, you weren't very old when you took over captaining the country. What do you think the key... So 19th of January 2014, the youngest ever skipper for Australia, before you were made the full-time skipper, and then full-time skipper in Feb 2014. What do you reckon the key to the art of captaincy? It's such a disgusting in cricket, isn't it? Like you're footy captain, soccer captain, you know, you toss the coin out, you go. But cricket, you are controlling the game.
You're running the show.
Yep.
Definitely on the field, but off the field, pretty much as well, which I think is, again, very unique. I'd had no leadership experience whatsoever previously in any age group.
Had you captained any team?
I think I'd captained the hockey team at Carey. That was it. And any cricket stuff.
Before you captained Australia, you'd captained the Carey hockey team.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. So
I'm
the
sure
most
that's
nervous
a good
part about
build-up.
that was doing the speech after the game.
Right.
Speech after the game that we had to do. So I'd never even thought about it. It was not on my radar or something that I wanted to do. I hadn't really given it two thoughts.
How did you get told?
So initially what happened was the head of selectors wanted to catch up for a coffee.
Oh, the old coffee catch-up.
I was still really young. I had no idea what I was walking into. I was like, oh, maybe this is what they do. Anyway, and she was like, oh, we want to make you vice captain. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, yep. This is what I used to do. I'll just go with the flow. I'm like, oh, okay, yep, cool. And she was like, we just want to, you'll sort of be under Jodie Fields, who was the captain. She'd been out for a little bit with a couple of serious hamstring injuries. So Alex Blackwell had actually been stepping in for her. And then she was vice captain, but I sort of went up into the vice captain sort of spot, which, it took me by surprise and probably a few by surprise. And then, so I was like, fine, I was going to learn under Jodie. And then we had an Ashes series coming up. So that was the first series where I was vice captain. And I distinctly remember Catherine Fitzpatrick saying to me, now, we do know that if Jodie gets injured, then this means that you will become captain. And we've thought about this and it's okay. And I'm like, okay. Didn't sound overly convincing, but I was like, yeah, cool. Like, it's not going to happen.
What year were you born?
92.
92. So it's 20. So you're 25, 26.
No, I was younger.
No,
than
it's
that.
actually
I was
21, 22. Sorry,
Yeah,
my
yeah,
maths
yeah.
is wrong. 2014, yeah,
Yeah.
21.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
okay.
me just, and still, like, I'd only been in the Aussie team for a couple of years, so I still felt like I was still finding my way a fair bit. Anyway, and then we played the test match in the Ashes series. We lost that. And then we came to Melbourne, and it was a training session the day before the first ODI. And I was in the drill, and someone threw a ball. Jodie Fields was going to catch it. It hit the stump just in front of her fingers and hit her on the end of the finger. And she walked off. And, like, you get hit on your fingers a lot in cricket, so
Yes.
it's not always a disaster if that happens. And, yeah, anyway. And then that night, literally, Fitzy was like, Jodie's, like, out for the rest of the series. Like, you're it. I was just like, okay, right.
I can't believe you'd never captained a cricket team to that point.
So I didn't know what I was doing. I had some good support. So Alex Blackwell was still on the side, so she was there. So I had some good support from the senior players. But I was genuinely making it up as I went along.
Were the senior players, were they fully on board, or were they like, why is this young?
Oh, they were on board. It was a bit of a left field sort of decision, I think.
Why'd they do it then? What did they see in you?
Well, obviously they did see some leadership ability in me. I don't know if it was more the on-field stuff or the off-field team stuff. I'm not really sure. I was sort of just minding my own business, being a batter.
Was it because that they knew that the world could see you were going to be the best batter in the team?
Yeah, maybe, but like that, I suppose that could have been the thinking back then. I think it's very different now.
Yes.
But yeah, I didn't really know, and to be fair, I never really asked. I just sort of this is sort of my attitude to most things. Is sort of I get on with it and I make it work, and you go with the flow, and you just find a way.
So was your head spinning when you led the team out?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So I went out to the coin toss with Charlotte Edwards, who's like the greatest English player ever, and did the coin toss or whatever. So I was, and it was fine. Like, I think we lost the first couple of games, and then we might have won a couple of games towards the back end of the series. But I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't have any idea what the role entailed or anything like that. And it grew and grew and grew over the time that I was in it. So that was part time, and then the next tour that we had was a World Cup, T20 World Cup, Bangladesh, and Jodie was due to come back, but they decided that they wanted me to do it full time. So, yeah, it was a bit of a tricky period.
So there was some friction there.
A little bit, yeah, because of making that decision. So then from then on, I was in charge. So,
So that T20 World Cup in Bangladesh, Australia versus England, you beat England again. England made 8 for 105. Australia get done 15 overs. Meg is top score 44 from 30. So your first full tournament, I didn't realise, as skipper, you've won the World Cup. A pretty good start.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. We definitely had the best team, and like the on-field stuff, I feel like I took to really quickly. And maybe I understood the game a lot better than what I realised, and maybe other people saw that. But the on-field stuff, the tactics, I feel like I picked up pretty quick. And obviously we had some good success on the field as well. So that was
What about the
start.
off-field, being the face of the team, being every media conference? Because my dealings with you are reasonably reserved. As you said, you just sort of sit in the corner, make your runs and get it done. How is it being thrust into those press conference environments?
That was probably the harder part. Just getting used to that, all the extra commitments and obligations that you are required to do. And World Cups are sort of next level as well. There's the ICC sort of come into it, and there's all these obligations you need to fulfill. That part I got used to. It was a bit annoying sometimes having to do everything, but that's okay. The hardest part I found is like the team stuff in terms of building relationships. In cricket, and I don't know if it's the same in other sports, but as soon as you have the captaincy, a barrier is automatically put up. And
What type of barrier?
just in terms of how open and honest and the relationships you can build with people. That
sucks.
I haven't quite worked out exactly the full reason. I think it's definitely got a little bit to do with selection, because in cricket, one of the teams I was in, you're a selector.
Yeah.
So as soon as someone in the team knows that,
So you were a selector as well.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like naturally you're probably going to want to just show your best to the captain, if that makes sense.
Well, you're not coming to your good mate Meg and saying, "Listen, I'm really struggling mentally with my game at the moment." Are you?
No. So
In case you don't pick them in the team.
yeah. So I think that that happens in cricket. So naturally, there's that barrier, which I never understood. I didn't realize. And a lot of these things you don't really realize until you're actually in the job. But yeah, just trying to look after everybody, make sure the environment's good, build the relationships, try and get the team on the same page, but you still want people to feel comfortable to be themselves and bring their unique strengths. Like that sort of stuff is the hardest part. It's the bit that you get the most out of, and in the teams that have been really successful that I've been in, like that's the best part. But it's that's the bit I found hardest, I get. And I think even, all the way to when I finished, I was always learning a lot about how to do that and how people operate, and people don't always think the same as me, and all that. It was a really big learning curve for me to understand and empathize with other people as well. I would say initially my empathy levels that wasn't one of my strengths.
Yeah.
But that's just because how I operate as a person, and I sort of couldn't quite understand that other people necessarily didn't see it how I saw it or feel the way I did. So that was something I had to work on a fair bit, to build those relationships and connections to everyone within the squad, players and staff. That was a constant sort of area of work for me. But I think I got better at it, and that now that I've sort of finished up, it is those relationships and connections that I constantly think about, and really the bit that I miss, as opposed to the cricket skills sort of thing. So that was, the most challenging part of leadership for me, is working through that sort of personable and relationship side of things.
But you went on, was it 25, 26 matches in a row? The one-day international team won. Like, you've captained the most successful cricket team in the history of Australian cricket. So you must have been on something, right?
Yeah, well...
It's a phenomenal run.
Yeah, I think so. And
all the things that can go wrong in a game of cricket, you lose a couple of early wickets, and to win that many matches in a row is truly extraordinary, Meg.
Yeah. And I remember Matthew Mott, who was coach for a big chunk of my time with Australia and who had a massive influence on me as a person and a cricketer. He would always say, the best teams don't always win. Especially in T20 cricket and World Cups, where it's actually a one-off sort of thing. But the fact we were able to win that many games over a long period of time is probably something that's quite an amazing achievement. And it came off the back of that disappointing sort of 2017 World Cup, where we sort of, like I said before, thought we had everything under control and didn't really need to do too much, and all came crashing down pretty quick. So that sort of spurred us on to that streak.
The T20 World Cup in Australia that everyone famously remembers, the win. I don't think a lot of people remember the semi-final when things could have gone terribly wrong. Really, there was rain. I look back at the highlights and you made 49 not out. That you never looked like winning that game, and I cast my mind back to winning. That was a captain's innings, but the fairy tale potential ending nearly didn't even get the opportunity.
No, it was. That's one of the days where it's like, I still can't believe it played out how it did. and it gets forgotten a little bit because of the final. But there's no way we should have played on that night. And it was just pure luck or something else because.
So if you hadn't played, you're done.
Yeah, because we finished second in our pool.
You lost. You lost a game.
Yeah, we lost. Well, we lost to India first off. The wheels came off a bit, to be fair, early in the tournament. We nearly lost to Sri Lanka the next game.
Yeah.
We were 3 for 10, chasing 120 or 130 in Perth. So
how'd the team react to that? Because this was always, this team doesn't get beaten. They're going to play the final on International Women's Day. It's going to be MCG. They're going to hold up the cup. Now, that happened, but how was the team reacting when this wasn't happening? Because the team was so used to success. And then Pez is out injured.
Yeah. Well, because we'd pretty much won everything coming into that T20 World Cup. And all the talk was about the final.
Yes.
And we'd spoken about it as a group, we were like, everyone's just talking about the final. It's like, but we sort of need to get there. And we knew it's hard to get to the final of the World Cup. No matter how good you are, it's so cutthroat, especially T20, because it's so fickle. Because you just have one person have a good couple overs and the game's blown wide open.
Yes.
So everybody just assumed that we were going to be in the final, and it was all they were talking about. And we knew as a team that wasn't just something that was going to happen. But you still sort of try and convince yourself or talk yourself into the fact it's all right. It'll be okay. It'll happen. And then we played India first up at the showgrounds in Sydney. We bowled first. Probably should have batted first in hindsight because the wicket wasn't great. And we got so there's this bowler who ironically is in the Delhi Capitals team, Poonam Yadav. And she's 2 foot tall, and she bowls leg spin. It's a loose term. It's sort of like leg spin, but she mainly bowls googlies actually. Right. And it's really slow. And some people might think that should be really easy to play. It's actually really hard because you play 15 shots before the balls come down. And so we knew going in what she bowls and all of this. And essentially the best way to play her is off the back foot unless you can get to her on the full. And what ended up, I think 3 or 4 of us got out to her coming down the wicket and missing it. We just were deers in headlights. I even think about that game, and I'd gone in with a plan to bat on off stump to a couple of their spinners, and I'd been practicing it, and then I got to the game and I forgot, and I batted on middle, and I got out. Whether that was the reason I got out or not, but it's just we're a bit deers in headlights. We just were not switched on. And India played well and we lost, and in a World Cup you lose one. It's it's all cutthroat from there on in, and it was the first game, so we had to win 5 games to get through. It's a bit of a disaster up front. First time we was feeling a little bit of heat, like this is what I spoke about before, in terms of it's pretty cutthroat from now on in. And then we played Sri Lanka over in Perth. 3
for stuff all.
Yeah, 3 for 10 I think we were.
Were you part of the 3? Or
not? No, I was still out there.
Thankfully.
Yeah. And then me and Rach Haynes, actually one of my favourite partnerships. We pretty much got us to within a couple. Rach got out towards the back end, but we ended up winning that game. And then from then on we were fine. But the semi-final was I remember. Modi told us not to look at the radar. We were all constantly looking at the radar. It was world-ending stuff.
Yeah.
It was just absolutely pelting down like no tomorrow for the whole day. The game before us it was double-header, the semis.
That's right, they got completely wiped,
England and India got washed out, not even a chance of getting on. We rocked up down in the change rooms and walked past all the England girls who were not overly pleased, as you could imagine. Yeah. And we were just sort of doing these ones, knowing that we could suffer the same fate pretty soon. And then, I don't know. Somehow it stopped and we got on. It was probably too wet to play, but we got on. We had a few things go our way. Moddy was out there with the rule book trying to talk to him about there's this thing in cricket where I think it's a myth, but you can't start if there's any rain.
Yes.
I don't actually think it's a rule. I think we've just convinced ourselves that it is. And he had the rule book.
Whatever cricket would do to shoot itself in the foot to not get people playing, that would be part of it. Yep.
Yeah, I feel like in cricket we just constantly wait around for something to happen. Like the amount of times that we've been waiting, it stopped raining, the covers are on, and then you take the covers on and go to play, it starts raining. Like we just waited an hour while it was. Like
or you're about to start playing this. So it's time for lunch now.
Yeah. Cricket's a strange game.
But you got the job done.
We got the job done. We I don't know how many we made. I lost the toss as per usual. I don't win many tosses. I cop a bit of flack for that. I reckon my record's better than what people say, but I don't know what the stats are. I lost the toss, which probably worked in our favour actually.
Yeah.
And we batted first. I made a few. There wasn't a great innings, but anyway,
49.
Got the job done. Yeah.
Not out.
Yeah.
Little reading, boost the average. I always enjoy that. I love a reading.
Yeah, very important. And then we won. That was great. That was one of the great games.
And then you get to the final. So at this stage, you haven't played in front of the crowds of the WPL. What was your thoughts when you walked out there and there was near on 80,000 people there and the MCG was just humming? It was International Women's Day. It was set up the way that the country hoped it was going to be set up.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better. To be playing India as well, who've got an incredible following no matter where they go. They'd obviously beaten us in the first game of the tournament. So in terms of, setting it up for the best possible event and day, it worked out really well. I must admit, early doors when they wanted to play it at the MCG and sell out or get close to, I was a big skeptic. I couldn't see it happening. But as soon as we were on the bus on the way in, you could just see the crowds. You could hear it. Once we were underneath, you could hear it. And then walking out for the anthems and that on that day was pretty incredible. I remember we were fielding. We were lucky that we got to enjoy our fielding innings, which very rarely happens, especially in T20 cricket. Like you're on edge for the whole game.
Well, due to the partnership at the start, wasn't it?
Well, I mean,
Healy and
nobody
Mooney
else needed
everywhere.
to do anything.
No.
Those two were just sort of finished the game off right from the start. We were fielding and at one stage I think everybody had their phone lights out and they were doing sort of the wave, and I remember looking at Rach Haynes and we just had a big smile on our face like we could actually take it all in. So that was a special moment to be able to do that because you don't often get to do that in big games.
And how do you end up on stage with Katy Perry? I went full Bunnings Lab yesterday and I tried to see who was dancing and who wasn't. Admittedly, you were hanging back, but then when the chorus of Firework came, you did start to move your way down the stage and get a lot more involved than I expected you would have, Meg. But how did you actually end up on the stage?
The dancing and singing is not my thing.
Right. You had a crack.
Yeah, I did. I probably had a few drinks before. There's no way I was getting out there.
But is it an invite from Katie? Does Cricket Australia say get on stage?
I think before the game there was a bit of like, if we win, we're definitely getting up. And I think there was a little bit of work done behind the scenes without us knowing to hopefully make that happen if we were to win. We probably would have gone up anyway, to be fair, even if we were allowed to or not allowed to. But we found our way up backstage. Molly Striner and Soph Molyneux were best on grounds.
They were the ones that were right down
front.
there.
Doing the worm, doing all sorts of stuff.
They were very good.
But that's their scene. Like that's them. Like they know how to, move the stage, and they enjoy that sort of thing. So I think for the most part, I was happy to watch them do all the work. But I don't know. There's actually this one photo of me hugging Katy Perry.
Yes.
She tried to go around me, but I literally I grabbed her to make sure it happened. And there's this photo of me, and I've got the biggest smile on my face. I do cop it a little bit because a few of my teammates think I was happier then than I was when we actually won the thing. But that is one of my favourite photos, actually.
Your first sabbatical from the game, when was that? I should have written a date down.
Yeah, it was after the Com Games. So what was that, 2022?
Yeah. So it was, to the cricket world, it was a big surprise. You've got the most successful team going around. You're the captain. You're making runs for fun. Why did you decide that you wanted to step away at that point? Yeah.
I think my head was spinning a fair bit, and it was probably for a number of reasons.
Do you want to explain those reasons or not?
Yeah. motivation was probably one. And this was after the 50 over World Cup that we won in 2022 in New Zealand. So, at that point, we'd won everything.
Numerous times.
Yeah, and that one day World Cup was probably the end of a bit of a journey because we lost the 2017 World Cup, and so it was I probably didn't even realise it, but it was sort of a bit of an end point to that sort of phase, to have achieved that, and the motivation probably wasn't necessarily there in the lead up to the Com Games, just to get back into the training and the commitment levels, I guess, that was required. And touring is quite lonely. You obviously within a team, you got lots of people around, but you spend a lot of time by yourself, and especially as a leader and a captain, I think in cricket even more so. So you get a couple of maybe negative thoughts around what you're doing and where you're heading and what it looks like. And so my head was spinning a fair bit, and you got so much time to think, and probably not a hell of a lot of good things start to go through your head. And I just got to a point where I just didn't really enjoy it. It wasn't, through that Com Games, I struggled a fair bit. Somehow I could get out there on game day, block it out, and still play quite well. I didn't know if that was a good or a bad thing. It almost became a bit of a distraction, actually, the games, because I couldn't think about anything else. Or, because cricket for so long had been my life, essentially. Every decision I made was based around cricket. And I was happy to do that. I wanted to do that, and it brought me so much, but I was starting to question whether I wanted to do that anymore and what that looked like. And it became quite overwhelming and daunting for me because it was so different.
How does that manifest in you at that time, being overwhelmed and daunted? Is it like something that's always on your mind, or is it?
Yeah.
Is it upsetting you?
Yeah. It was quite upset. I was probably pretty sad. Like, I wouldn't say I'm a very emotional person.
Even the way you say emotional shows me that you're not emotional.
Yeah. But it's sort of, it became quite hard to sort of just feel like I could think clearly and actually stop and think about what I was doing. Because when you're in the midst of playing and touring, there's so much going on. Like, it's really hard to get any clear air and actually stop and think. So it became quite a little bit challenging through that period to work out where I was actually at and what I wanted to do. So we finished the Com Games, and then I just needed to press the stop button just for a bit and work out exactly what I was thinking and feeling, and actually try and work it out. So that was sort of the reasoning behind that. It was just a little bit of a pause button to allow me time to work out exactly where I was at with everything, because it was new. It was new to me. Like, it didn't really make a lot of sense. Like, it does now. But at the time, it was like, well, you're traveling the world, you're playing cricket, with some of your good friends. What else why could you possibly not be enjoying that? Because I had for so long, and it just had shifted a little bit, and it was hard for me to get my head around, I guess. So it was a pause button.
What was life without cricket? Do you work in a coffee shop?
Oh, I did for a bit. Yeah, I travelled. So that was nice to just sort of be a bit normal, go out to the real world is what I call it, because the sporting bubble it's great. There's so many good things, and you get a lot of support. You do some amazing things, incredible opportunities, but it's not the real world. You get a lot of things done for you. You get, you don't make a lot of decisions for yourself, and it's extremely structured, and it's good in a lot of ways. But I feel like, I just felt like I was very not equipped in any way to go out to the real world and function. And it just and then once for me anyway, I started thinking about these things, and it just was a bit of a cycle. It just was hard to sort of stop. So that was why that period of time was good for me, just to be able to go out and just step away from that sort of sport bubble for a little period of time.
Did you make a good coffee?
Well, I didn't actually graduate to the coffee machine. It was a bit sad. I
what
was
were
just
you
on the
doing?
dishes, like.
Oh, you're a dish pig.
Well, like taking the
Captain of Australian Air.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was tiring stuff.
Welcome
though.
to the real world.
Taking people's orders and all that sort of stuff. I did a few shifts washing the dishes, and that was being like, I think I might go back to cricket.
Well, it brought you back to cricket, and we'll get to your eventual retirement. I guess there was the big build-up for the Ashes series, and then you didn't play in the Ashes series.
Yep.
So this is where it gets tricky, Meg, because this is something you haven't talked about, and if you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I'm happy to go through it. So I came back, played Pakistan series, I think it was in early January, and then T20 World Cup in South Africa, and then WPL. So I came back to play.
And had tremendous success on field.
Yep. And the whole way through, and I think I said this before, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I was always able, no matter what was happening, I was always able to perform.
That's a remarkable thing.
Yeah, I did amaze myself sometimes, and I think it was because it had become a bit of autopilot. Like I knew what I was doing on the cricket field, because I'd done it for so long, and it was second nature, so I didn't have to think too much about it. And I was always competitive. And so when I got into the game situation, I was like, I want to win. I want to help the team win. So I think that was part of it. And then, so I played that, and then came back from WPL. And, I enjoyed playing that World Cup and the Pakistan series and the WPL. But it was different. It didn't have the same zing, and I loved the playing part, but the commitment and the even like the meetings and the training, it was starting to just become a little bit. I didn't necessarily want to do it as much as I wanted to, and that was fine for a period of time, but it just it wasn't quite the same. It was different, and I was almost trying to convince myself that it was fine, and I'd get through the phase, and it'll all go back to how it was before. Anyway, and then so I did that, and as I said, touring's a very lonely sort of place. It's strange because you've got so many people around you, but at the same time, it's the opposite.
You do spend a lot of time sitting in hotel rooms. I know when I'm working on the career, it's like it's another flight, it's another hotel room, and it's
and you just got a lot of time to think.
You do,
and then and so then we went into our off season, and then I sort of you get left to your own devices a little bit and do your own thing, a few different things, and then the Ashes came around, and I got ruled out with a medical issue, and it was a combination of all different things, but I love exercise, and I probably just went a little bit overboard with that. Was a bit of my coping mechanism. I love just chucking the headphones in and going for a run. But I probably took things a little bit too far, and it sort of got a little bit out of control.
In what way?
Well, I was probably over-exercising under fueling, I would say. And
Deliberately?
Not really, but it probably sort of moved into that without even realising it at the start. And I was in denial, really. I'm fine. People kept telling me I was getting injured.
So you were losing a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Over-exercising, under-fueling.
People kept telling me I was getting injured, and I'm not getting injured. I'm fine. And all through it, I never did. Somehow, amazingly. So I was not in a place to be able to go on tour and play cricket and give the commitment levels that were required for that Ashes series, mentally and physically. So, the decision was made with me in conjunction with the medical team to miss that tour.
Was it hard to stop over-exercising and under-fueling as a way you put it?
Yeah. And to be fair, I still probably the ratio is probably still a little bit out right now, but it's definitely at a better level.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to ask you now and what not
Yeah.
to ask you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So, did it develop into a eating disorder for you, Meg, or that's not what it's labelled as?
It's not labelled as that, but it was just I was just exercising a lot and I wasn't eating enough to fuel that, and so it was just a bit out of whack.
Why? Why were you doing that? Like,
Well,
what was that
yeah.
providing for you mentally?
I think it was just a bit of control.
Okay.
Yeah, because I felt very out of control in terms of what my future looked like. In terms of, was it cricket? Was it not cricket? What does life look like? If I'm not playing, how can I not really want to be travelling the world and playing cricket? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So it was a bit of control.
Okay.
I felt like I was in control of that, and that made me feel better. So that was sort of the Ashes series, which I missed. And then I sort of started to sort of sort myself out and get a bit of a clearer thought process on things. And
did you do that by yourself, or did you get some help to do that?
I definitely got some help.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that valuable?
Absolutely, yeah. And I've always been a little bit unsure about psychologists and people sort of helping you with what you're going through. I never used to really talk too much about
Quite old school, aren't you?
Yeah. It just didn't. I don't know. I never really opened up a lot to many people. I was always very closed book, which sort of goes back a little bit to the captaincy and leadership stuff I was talking to you about before. I was always very very level. Didn't go too high or too low. Always pretended or made it look like everything was fine, even though maybe it wasn't, but I was...
This is where the old, your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness comes into it. I've been having this discussion with my children lately about what allowed you to achieve such success can not necessarily be good for you.
Yeah.
So when you're chatting with someone, if you don't mind me asking, if there's one thing you took away that helped you from these conversations that I don't want to delve into, what would be the theme or the message that someone gave that you're like, okay, that's something I can use to work my way through this situation?
I actually think it's just the process of getting it outside of your head. So when you're sort of thinking about something and the conversations are going on, like, it just becomes this bit of a cycle. And then the moment you sort of get it out of your head, and even the person listening doesn't necessarily have to come up with a solution or say anything. It just makes that a little bit easy, like a bit lighter, a bit easier to sort of understand, and the feeling's a bit better for me anyway.
And how are you tracking with it all now? All good?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. So I feel like I'm in a good spot now. I still, cricket's still part of what I do, but I just wasn't cut out for the international sort of tour and schedule and what came with all of that. As I said, I love like the playing part of it is still something I enjoy, but there's a lot more to it than that.
The retirement announcement outside the MCG was heartbreaking in a way, because it, like, obviously your parents were there and you got upset talking to your parents. Like, I looked at it again last night. It's like, I'm not convinced that she's convinced that this is what. And now that you're explaining to me, I can understand that.
Yeah.
So what was it like to put a full stop on it and say, okay, I'm still going to have the opportunity to play cricket and do something I love and play on these different tournaments, but what was it like to say, this institution of the Australian cricket team, I'm going to be done with that?
Yeah, it was very strange. And like, through my career, it's like, I always thought when I did retire, it'd be at the end of a World Cup cycle or the end of a big tournament, and you sort of plan it a bit. And you've got what you're doing next in order, you got your finances in order, you got everything in place. Like, that's how I thought that it would all happen. And none of that happened. None of that happened. It all happened a lot quicker than what I thought. But having reflected on it, it was building for a long time. So it wasn't a snap decision. It from that 2022 World Cup, that's when it...
Well, the way you've explained it, it wasn't a snap decision
no,
at all. It was quite a long decision.
Exactly, yeah. So it might have seemed like it was, but I actually had been thinking about it for a long time. Maybe not the word retirement, but the way I was thinking about things had changed. So it wasn't a snap decision. It all had to happen pretty quickly, because the squad announcement was coming out for, I think, the India tour or West Indies tour, something like that. And obviously I wasn't going to be in it. And so it just had to happen really quickly. And I don't know, I didn't want to do a press conference or anything.
You have to.
I know,
You're the
I
captain.
did. I know, I did. And in the end, what made me do it was I wanted to sort of tell the story a little bit rather than other people. Because for a long time, and I get it, because I didn't really give much away, people were sort of a bit unsure as to what was happening. And so therefore you leave it open to interpretation, which I understand. So I sort of wanted to sort of be the one to tell the story, if that made sense. So that was sort of why I did do it in the end. But it was in the middle of Big Bash. It was a bit messy, but it sort of had to happen then. So, and then and it was strange because nothing really changed after that because I was still playing Big Bash. So then, I was playing a game, I think, the next day. And so it was just like...
Clayton's retirement.
Yeah, it just was all a bit weird.
But now that it's done and it's behind you and you're still playing cricket, the extra time, what have you started to get into now that you're like, right, this is the stuff that I'm able to do now that I couldn't do when I was playing cricket? Like, I don't know if you've taken up the guitar or started travelling the world or where has this free time that you've now got partially worked into your life?
Yeah, well, it's going to kick in the next few months for real, because all through December, January, February, and March, I was still playing a little bit. So, I mean, it's even just being able to go to friends and family events that I would have been away for if I was playing. Like, it's sort of the little things at the moment that you probably don't realise that you miss, and that's sort of part and parcel of it. But it's just being able to go to little things like that, which has been nice so far. And I guess the next bit is sort of working out what my other passions are.
This is interesting. So have you any idea what the next bit is? Like, you're a young woman with the world ahead of you. Like, Frey's your man that looks after you. He could be saying, right, Meg, well, you can go into commentary, or you could go into motivational speaking, or you could, or you go into coaching, or you could become the world's best coffee maker. Like, the world is your oyster in many, many ways because of what you've achieved.
Yeah, and that's exciting and daunting at the same time.
Yeah. Because,
like I was saying before, like, everything is so structured for you and for such a long period of time. You don't really need to make any decisions for yourself. Whereas now, it's almost like, what do I want to do? Like, I could go into coaching or commentary, but is that what I really want to do? And then I've got to make the decision to go and do it. So that's sort of what I'm grappling with at the moment. Is like, I love sport, so sport will be involved in the next step that sort of I go with. I'm lucky in a way that I don't have to rush into anything specific. I love coffee. I've travel far and wide to find good coffee. I do have this one vision of maybe one day owning my own coffee shop.
Yes.
I've got no clue as to how to set it up or what actually is involved in running it, but that certainly does interest me. It's sort of been a background thing for a long time, but whether I can get into that, I've got a bit of learning to do in terms of the business side of things, and so that's something I'm keen to do. But I mean, I guess the thing that's like exciting is I can say yes to things now that I couldn't before.
Absolutely.
So that is something I'm looking forward to. So, yeah, for the moment it's a little bit quiet, which I'm sort of keen to do, just to sort of take a breath, because I think retirement will properly hit me over the next couple of months, because it will be the first time where it's been like this, not a whole heap on for a bit, but it also gives me a chance to go and try new things. So that's my job for the next little bit, is to work out what that is.
I can't wait to see what it is. You'd be fantastic in commentary. I can see you doing it. But, there's many things you'd be fantastic at. We always finish this podcast the same way, and you would know because you listen to the show about all the success you've achieved, Meg, and you've been really honest, and it's a really, really cool podcast, and I'm glad it's gone the way it has. What advice would you give to those out there that are hoping to achieve success in their field, because you've had tremendous success in yours?
There was always this quote. in the MCG gym
Mm.
that we used to use before we moved over to Junction Oval. And I never really understood what it meant, but it's ships are safe in the harbour, but that's not what ships were built for.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to read it when I was probably fussing around in the gym, not doing gym when I was young. And I never really understood it. But the more I've thought about it, like, I think a lot of people these days, and young people in particular, and I've seen it in cricket a lot, is we do things that are really safe because we don't want to be bad at something or don't want to feel like we've failed. So we don't try new things or try a skill that we don't know how to do or try and learn it because we don't want to be bad at it. So my advice would be is to go out there and actually do something new and try it. And actually failing or not being able to do something or achieve something is actually a really good thing, because that's how you actually discover what you can and can't do, and what you're actually capable of. And more often than not, I think you'll surprise yourself when you give that a crack. So yeah, it would be just don't play it safe. Go out there and give it a crack.
It's great advice. You're a star, hence the nickname Megastar. Thanks for being honest and open. May you get many more games of cricket if that's what you wish, or open a coffee shop or become the world's best cricket commentator. But also thanks to all the cricket fans for all the joy you brought us, and that I started with your cover drive. I'll finish with your cover drive to Thing of Beauty, Meg. Thanks for joining me on the Howie Games. I hope this was okay for you.
No worries. Thanks, Howie.
Well done.